From the library of the New York Stock Exchange at the corner of Wall and Broad Streets in New York City, you're inside the Ice House, our podcast from Intercontinental Exchange on markets, leadership, and vision in global business. The dream drivers that have made the NYSE an indispensable institution of global growth for over 225 years. Each week, we feature stories of those who hatch plans, create jobs, and harness the engine of capitalism. Right here, right now at the NYSE and at ICE's exchanges and clearinghouses around the world. And now welcome inside the Ice House. Here's your host, Josh King of Intercontinental Exchange.
As sure as it's Labor Day weekend here in New York City, it's the opening rounds of the US Open, truly one of the great spectacles of international sport. The tournament, first held on the grass courts of the Newport Casino in Newport, Rhode Island in 1881, by 1915 it had made its way to the West Side Tennis Club in Forest Hills, Queens, and in 1978 arrived at its current home, the Billie Jean King USTA National Tennis Center in Flushing Meadow, built on the site of the old New York World's Fair. But so much has changed since 1978. When Jimmy Connors beat Bjorn Borg in the men's draw and Chris Everett outlasted Pam Shriver in the women's championship, rackets have gone from wood to steel to graphite composite, and prize money has ballooned to $3 million for the winner in each gender, if you can outlast the 127 other players who want the crown just as much. As you watch the quarters, semis, and finals this week, see if Carlos Alcaraz of Spain or Iga Swiatek of Poland can retain their titles, or if other contenders are going to be crowned the next king and queen of New York. I've always loved a big sporting event. On one of our episodes earlier this year with ESPN chief Jimmy Pitaro, I waxed on about the bucket list opportunity I had to attend the first round of the Masters in person at Augusta National, thanks to my ICE colleague Alex Albert, who hails from the cradle of American golf. And now I've made another pilgrimage to Flushing for the 23 US Open to watch some of the second round matches, but I had an ulterior motive. Two New York Stock Exchange companies, ESPN, part of the Walt Disney Company, and IBM, the firm once known as International Business Machines, are business partners of both the Masters and the US Open, each bringing their technology and creativity to bear on enhancing the fan experience, either through the television screen or our smartphones, where IBM provides the statistics and scoring, and increasingly relies on artificial intelligence to allow us to dive deeper into the data and the drama of sports as never before. IBM and Disney go back a ways as our portal to sports immortality. One of my obsessions is the 1960 Winter Olympics in Squaw Valley, where Alec Cushing, a fixture of New York City and Newport and a World War II veteran, convinced the USOC and then the International Olympic Committee in Paris to bring their winter spectacle to a basically undeveloped mountain and valley in the Sierra Nevada range on the California border, somewhere near Reno. To pull off the impossible, he relied on three men leading New York Stock Exchange-listed companies: William Paley of CBS, Walt Disney himself and his Imagineers, and Thomas J. Watson Jr., the CEO of IBM and the son of Watson Sr., the storied IBM founder. Paley provided the live television, Disney provided the pageantry, and Watson provided the precision scoring to give Cushing's Winter Circus the credibility it needed to redefine how the world gets and enjoys its sports from, then, the comfort of their living room, and now, the palm of our hands on our smartphones. In a minute, our producer, Lauren Sullivan, and I will take you out to Flushing Meadow, Queens, to visit with the modern-day inheritor of the legacies of Disney, Paley, and Watson, IBM's Noah Syken, the company's vice president for sports and entertainment partnerships. Our conversation with Noah Syken on sports, technology, data, and AI, and where our immersion into new forms of entertainment is headed. It's coming up right after this.
Connecting the opportunity is just part of the hustle.
Opportunity is using data to create a competitive advantage.
It's raising capital to help companies change the world.
It's making complicated financial concepts seem simple.
Opportunity is making the dream of home ownership a reality.
Writing new rules and redefining the game.
And driving the world forward to a greener energy future.
Opportunity is setting a goal
and charting a course to get there.
Sometimes the only thing standing between you and opportunity is someone who can make the connection.
At ICE, we connect people to opportunity.
Our guest today, Noah Syken, is Vice President for Sports and Entertainment Partnerships at IBM. That's NYSE ticker symbol, IBM. Noah's been with the company for nearly 25 years, having come up through the ranks of the advertising industry to help IBM and its Watson franchise make the most of its Jeopardy challenge, its sponsorship of the Grammys, and its partnership with the Masters, Wimbledon, and now the US Open. Back in July, we hosted IBM Chairman and CEO Arvind Krishna at our monthly Whiskey Wednesday on Wall Street with Wapner series, and as you might expect, artificial intelligence was basically topic 1, 2, and 3. Some time passed, and then our Inside the Icehouse producer, Lauren Sullivan, and I were curious about all the advances in technology that deliver the most cutting-edge, AI-driven stats to the palm of our hand and make these IBM-enabled services deeply immersive for fans wherever they are. So, it's brought us out to Flushing Meadow, where we're sitting in Noah's very busy IBM Command Center this week in the heart of the Billie Jean King USTA National Tennis Center. So, Noah, you've been part of IBM for 25 years. Does showing up at another edition of the Masters, Wimbledon, or here at the US Open ever get old for you?
No, we have a great tradition around these events, and 30 years ago, we started sponsoring and bringing technology to these great events, but what's always exciting is trying to up the ante every year. Setting a new bar, doing something first, painting a picture of what's possible. That's what gets me excited every day, and I know that's what gets our technology people, focused all year long.
I talked about it a little bit in the introduction, but for our listeners, just basically sketch out what your job is. It's a unique position, Vice President, Sports and Entertainment Partnerships. What does that entail?
Yeah, so when we think about these programs that we run at the Masters or Wimbledon US Open, they kind of break down into 3 parts. One is amazing, innovative technologies that we can bring to life for our partners and for people around the world. Then, if we have an amazing innovation or an amazing story to tell, we like to share that with clients, right? And so how do we bring our clients into the fold, paint a picture of what they can do with these technologies? And most of them are running big businesses, and we try to draw that parallel between, the tennis event is a business, just like a bank, insurance company, or any other enterprise. So technology, great client experience, and then storytelling. How do we bring the story to the world through all the modern techniques, whether it's social media, advertising, or other forms of communication?
I mean, storytelling definitely hits Lauren and me where it counts, because we do storytelling about businesses every day at the New York Stock Exchange. And, thanks to my friendship with your colleague, John Adashek, I've been a guest of IBM for the quarterfinals night, I think, for the last 2 U.S. Opens. In terms of what you're going to be offering in 2023, how does it compare to 2022, 2021?
Yeah, well, 2021 was still a pretty interesting year for us. We're kind of emerging from COVID, but it's actually a natural extension. We have a couple programs, one around AI commentary, one around a predictive draw. And there's a lot of buzz today around generative AI, and we just launched our Watson X generative AI platform. But we were actually using generative AI in 2021 for the Grammy Awards, for the US Open. We were having debates. We were soliciting feedback from fans around the world. Who's the greatest tennis player for the Grammys? Who's the greatest rock musician? We took all that input and we used generative AI to develop a hypothesis around what the answer to that question was. So a lot of buzz around generative AI. Flash forward to today, we're using video, taking the data off of the courts, teaching the AI tennis language, the players from around the world, what Arthur Ashe Stadium is versus Louis Armstrong Stadium is, and producing highlight clips using that data and generative voice technology. So it's all a natural extension, but this whole generative AI wave really for us started a long time ago.
IBM's been partners with the USTA for 30 years. You mentioned it. If that brings us then back to 1993, my first year working at the White House, there was barely a whitehouse.gov. How has usopen.org evolved from 93 to 2023?
Yeah, so people, we get so enamored with where we are today in the technology arc, if you will. But in 1993, we were still learning about what this internet thing was, right? And if you think about it, it sounds amazing today to say, but just getting a live score on the internet was a huge deal in 1993. So, it started with painting a picture for the USTA of this emerging technology platform, then helping them see how it could help them engage fans more. Let's deliver scores, live scores, point-by-point scores. Then we move into the video experiences. So whether it's bringing the USTA online, moving into the mobile space, over-the-top programming, unique applications, and now generative or AI and now generative AI, it's all one long arc that starts from, have you taken advantage of all the data that you have available? The data back in 93 was the internet. Right? So we look forward to the future, but again, it's just part of a long journey.
I did get to see Spain's Carlos Alcaraz beat Italy's Yannick Skinner in the quarters last year. In June, Noah, your Watson X technology made the unpopular call predicting Alcaraz was going to beat Novak Djokovic at Wimbledon. Is Watson going to go out on a limb this year at the U.S. Open? How does that all work to make that predictive outcome?
Yeah, well, we don't necessarily think that was so far out on a limb. Carlos Alcaraz was the reigning U.S. Open champion, so there was a lot of energy out there around Novak, but to us, it's all in the data. And for us, we do predictions for every single match, and it's not so much about we want to be right 100% of the time, but the reality is what we want to do is generate conversation. We want to generate conversation around the U.S. Open. The folks at the USTA want people talking about their event, getting excited about the event, maybe think about coming out to the event. So whether it's the predictions that we make, the predictive draw, or even the AI commentary bit, it's really about fan engagement and getting the U.S. Open into popular culture in these 2 weeks and getting people excited about watching on ESPN or on usopen.org or coming out to the event.
On the topic of AI commentary, as you and I were talking about before we started recording, before we had your boss, Dr. Arvind Krishna, at the NYSE a couple of weeks ago for one of our Whiskey Wednesdays on Wall Street evening sessions, I listened to some of the IBM Watson X-powered AI commentary videos from Wimbledon. How close, Noah, do you think Watson X is to supplanting the call of Al Michaels when he famously said in 1980,
McClanahan is there, the puck is still loose, 11 seconds, you've got 10 seconds, the countdown going on right now, Morrow, up to Schultz, 5 seconds left in the game, do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable!
Yeah, well, it's a really good question. I think the capabilities around Watson X are mostly focused on speed and innovation. So leaving that to the side for the moment. The reality is today there's 17 courts of action out there. There's commentators on 2 or 3 courts. So those other 14 courts are pure white space. There is no commentary. And so we think about how are we bringing these capabilities to the white space, not replacing Johnny Mac or Chris Everett. And I think the other way to think about it is those types of commentators, they have personal relationships with the players and the competitors out here. They show up at 9 o'clock in the morning, they go to the practice court, they talk to the coaches, they talk to the players. They've, in many cases, seen these players grow up from when they were 14 years old. So we certainly have a lot of optimism about where our AI commentary solutions are going, and we talk more about that. But I don't think Johnny Mac should be awfully fearful. There's that inherent understanding of the players that's going to be pretty hard to replace.
Let's geek out then for just a minute, because I've listened to it a little bit. Tell our listeners, bring them on a journey. What does the voice actually sound like? How's it generated? How does it work?
Yeah, well, look, we use our text-to-speech capabilities of Watson to generate the voice. The voices are synthetic voices that have been trained. It's really a matter of teaching the AI the language of tennis. Now, what do people expect? People probably expect their GPS in their car. They might experience a little smart device in their house. And those voices are very recognizable to people. And I think that's basically what you're going to get in the AI commentary today. But we're going to advance that for sure.
Will you sample Johnny Mac's voice and let him call the 17 matches?
Yeah, I mean, look, we think there's a lot of opportunity. There are across sports. There are iconic voices in the world of sports.
John Facenda, right? Bring him back from the dead?
I don't know if we can bring people back from the dead. It does take a little bit of live training, but we were talking college football before. If you think about the voice of Keith Jackson, right? Great, amazing commentator. Imagine if you could have canned that voice and generated all these years later and have, Keith Jackson call the national championship game. So those kinds of things are certainly on the forefront, but more viscerally for the USTA. If you think about tennis, there are players from not every country around the world, but a wide swath of countries around the world. There's a lot of languages represented on the courts. So we're doing English language AI commentary. All of these highlights can be published in multi-languages almost instantaneously. So we're going to be bringing that to the future. So engaging fans around the world is what the USTA always asks us to do. AI is one of the tools to be able to do that instantaneous language translation for these highlight clips.
I'm just waiting for an AI version of Bud Collins. If you can recreate that, that would be a miracle.
I think the media room down here is named for Bud Collins, if I'm not mistaken.
You mentioned also the IBM Power Index earlier, and if you're paying close attention to it, match insights and likelihood to win, I mean, how much, Noah, do you think it could affect the joy of watching athletes at their best and the randomness that one FL team can beat another, as Al Pacino once said as coach Tony D'Amato of the Miami Sharks on any given Sunday?
I don't know what to say, really. 3 minutes till the biggest battle of our professional lives. All comes down to today. Either we heal as a team, or we're going to crumble. Inch by inch, play by play, till we're finished.
Yeah. That's what we see. We see upsets all the time, right? And so how do you actually determine where an upset might occur? Well, world rankings go back 52 weeks, and they rank the players based on 52 weeks of data. I think we could probably all acknowledge that how a player played in Wimbledon just a couple weeks ago is probably most representative of how they're going to play in the U.S. Open. So the Power Index is all about driving knowledge about recency. Mm-hmm. How are they playing coming into this event? And so you may have a very low-ranked player from a world ranking standpoint, but the Power Index is going to probably rank them maybe a little bit higher. That upset may not be as big of an upset as you might have thought if you only paid attention to the world rankings. So we think the Power Index provides a new perspective on what to expect in this tournament, not necessarily, going back a year where injuries may happen or performance may have varied.
I'm curious how much you think the players themselves mine your data. I watched Alex Gibney's documentary on Boris Becker the other day. Boom Boom Becker would famously dig himself into a hole and into a match before mounting this heroic comeback. Could AI-powered tools have helped him and other players add a few Grand Slams to their record? What are you hearing from players today about using this stuff?
I think, going back into history, we were providing, some insights to players years ago. But I think when you think about patterns, patterns across the court, how do we recognize the patterns of play for particular players, successful players, unsuccessful players? AI has an opportunity to mine that in new ways. One of the other pieces that we're bringing to AI commentary is visual recognition. So bringing new kind of texture to the AI commentary in the future. So bringing vision to the court, mixing that up with artificial intelligence and reflecting on the patterns of play is one of the areas that the players certainly reflect on when they speak with us.
I'm curious, I had one of those bucket list moments in April watching around one of the Masters in person, but you can't bring your phone into Augusta National. Only when I left could I enjoy what you were offering on the Masters app. How close did technology let you get to those fairways at Augusta?
Well, look, at the Masters, there's all kinds of data being collected from across that course. People really don't see it. It's buried in the trees and very smartly disguised. But one of the things that we really think about is personalized experiences. How do we deliver an experience for you that's different than me or, some other fan? And so the My Group application is really a step on the road of personalization. Give me my own personalized highlight reel, and then, stew it together with the best moments from across the entire tournament. Now, the broadcast partners were collecting every shot from every hole at the Masters for a couple years, but that led to a lot of really quiet golf. And so that was the need. It's nice to hear ambient noise and birds chirping, but just a little bit of texture around those clips was what the club was desiring. And that's why we brought the AI commentary on top of the My Group feature at the Masters. And again, we'll continue to progress that.
And when the tournament in Augusta wraps up, how do you and your team sort of look at usage of the app and how people, what was popular, what was not popular, what was your learning after the 2023 Masters?
Yeah, so are they engaging with the content, and are they engaging with the actual commentary features? So at varying points over the course of all three of these tournaments, we had commentary turned off as a default versus turned on. And we would see people, come see the clip and immediately turn on the commentary feature. So when we see that kind of behavior, we know we're onto something. And we saw, I think at Wimbledon, we saw over 2.5 million views of those clips.
So here at the Billie Jean King USTA National Tennis Center, I can look at my IBM US Open app to my heart's content. I have it open right here. For our listeners, what can they see to complement what they're actually going to be seeing on ESPN?
Yeah, so they're going to be able to see, obviously, all the scores and stats in the most basic form. They're going to see all the winners and passing shots and all that. But I think they're going to see some perspective in terms of, again, predictions for each match, who's likely to win. They're going to get some great factoids that were generated by AI around each player. They're going to get the power index, which is our own ranking of the global tennis players. And they're going to get the predictive draw. So for each player, depending on where you are in the draw, how difficult is it going to be for you as a player to make it to the next round or make it all the way to the finals? And again, that's a new feature that people can tune in for.
As a fan, then, myself, take me as an example. How do you balance keeping your eye on two screens? The screen up on the wall in your living room and the thing on your hand, on-court action versus in-app data. There's a magic to just immersing yourself in the production itself.
It's an interesting challenge. But in the world of sports, I actually think this is one of the areas that we really haven't truly tapped into. The second screen, the augmented reality kinds of experiences, they're out there. They're starting to make their way into the world of sports. But in some of the big arenas, big stadiums, I think we need to get the connectivity and the bandwidth at scale in order to really deliver the richest experiences possible. So you mentioned the Masters, no phones. You mentioned people in stadiums who may be a little bit distracted. I don't think we've fully tapped into what can be delivered to make it a true natural benefit to people in the stadiums. And frankly, that's one of the things I'm excited about for the future.
I had Jimmy Pitaro on my podcast a couple weeks ago. We were talking about what he's trying to. He just looks at his two teenage sons, and do they have their heads buried in their phones, or are they watching the action on the screen? And when you mic these players up live, pitcher and catcher battery in a crucial situation, they're riveted purely on the screen. And as you think about tennis, championship tennis and championship golf, where's the potential to get actual audio of what they're doing? You certainly can hear what's happening on a tennis court. Sometimes you don't necessarily want to intrude on the privacy of two people walking down the fairway at Augusta.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we saw that at Augusta for the first time this year. So we see interviews happening live on the course. Probably hard to interview a tennis player in the middle of a point, but we get that ambient noise. For me, as a huge golf fan, in all candor, I just want to hear the caddy-golfer relationship. Frankly, I don't know if I need an announcer, no offense to my favorite announcers, but that caddy-golfer relationship, I think, is incredibly important. So the other thing I think we reflect on is how people consume content these days. You mentioned younger people. Well, the social media landscape has completely transformed what people expect in today's world. First of all, the attention spans are about 42 seconds, but they also get unique perspective around their favorite, artists, celebrities, or athletes. Every celebrity and athlete, they have their own Instagram. They're showing, what they wore this morning, what they had for dinner tonight. I think overall, the expectations in society today are different. And as this next generation comes up, I think sports properties are going to need to, wrestle with that. They already are.
I mean, you mentioned that you're a huge golf fan. I mean, you are a product of the University of Miami, certainly a hotbed of athletics. What are your memories of your first major sporting event?
My first sporting event that I can viscerally remember is walking into Yankee Stadium and walking through the tunnel and seeing the grass for the first time and looking for Reggie Jackson. And I think from that moment on, there was something special about walking into a stadium and the energy. I was saying to somebody earlier here at the US Open, my favorite part of the US Open is actually between sessions. And as the day session's clearing out and the fans for the evening session are coming in, there's kind of a buzz in the air. And for me, it's the competition on the court or on the grass, but it's the atmosphere around it and those kind of intangibles that I always remember.
How do you think some of the data spun out from Watson X would have helped you excel, and how's it being put to the test now on college campuses and pro locker rooms?
Yeah, well, obviously the players, there's a lot going on here. We talk about data a lot. And how do you protect data and use trusted data? I think one of the big things people and players and the players' unions are thinking about is, as players become more instrumented, as their heart rates and all their biometrics are captured, who owns that data? How do you use that data? How do you use that data in contract negotiations and and otherwise? And I think video analytics, is a real game changer. It's going to be next in terms of our rollout of some of the AI commentary features, but the subtleties that you can catch in video analysis, I think, are so insightful, along with the patterns we talked about as well. So I think again, we're just scratching the surface, but I do think some of the issues around who owns that data, should the player own the data, should the team own the data, can that data be used against them in contract negotiations? I think those are really important issues that we're going to have to wrestle with.
I mean, you're touching on some huge issues, and I want to actually get into a little bit of that. Were you conscious at the time back in Miami of the big business of sports, whether it was football or basketball, that intercollegiate athletics represented back then?
The money was always very clear to me, right? And I became friends with many players on the football team, and they, I personally witnessed, some of the greatest players in college football have monetary problems. And I was scratching my head all those years ago, like, how is this possible? We're national champions, right? There's advertisers coming out, but the players, they're asking me for meals, literally. I kid you not. So I guess I was sensitized to it at that point. I'm not a big fan of how it's all developing, the kind of unrestrained nature of how some of the NIL work is developing, but I think that's got to be figured out. It's not sustainable where it is today.
I mean, these big issues, the transfer portal, NIL, name, image, likeness, which really allows players to receive compensation. What's your perspective on the professionalization of college sports?
Well, I would draw a line between recruiting players versus when players are in a college or in an institution. The notion of, hey, I'll pay you $2 million if you come play at my university, for me, that's probably not a road that's awfully healthy for college athletics. But once you're at the university and the local car dealership wants to do some promotional activities with you, I do think players should be able to engage in those kinds of relationships. So again, I think overall we're moving in the right direction. I just think we need to kind of be a little bit smarter about how we're doing that. And don't get me started on conference realignment.
Back to Noah Syken. I mean, your first job out of college was at the storied advertising agencies of Madison Avenue, Ogilvy, and Mather as a media planner. And for those of us whose understanding of the ad world is limited to John Hamm as Don Draper, how does media planning fit into the creative mix?
Well, sports runs on media. Make no mistake about it, the sponsors, the advertisers are the ones who are paying for everything that we see, on screen. To me, when I started my career, I was so excited because the internet was just kind of coming to life, and to me, it presented a lot of opportunities. Today, we take for granted all those graphics that we see on screens, the probability of the guy making the catch or the probability of the guy sinking the putt. That wasn't the case back then. And so, to me, I was working at Ogilvy, but also working on the IBM account. And it was so amazing to be able to work with the colleagues in IBM, the technologists, but have the access to media platforms to work with the ABCs at the time, the ESPNs before that, to actually bring data into the screen of sporting events. People may not recognize that. IBM goes back to the Olympics in the 60s with bringing data, instrumenting sporting events, but then bringing it into the media landscape to enrich broadcasts. I don't know if we get it. I don't know if we need credit for it, but I think that's one of the things that IBM, was instrumental in the evolution of broadcasting of sports.
I mean, talking about the guy sinking the putt, we'll fast forward to 1999. There was this job that opened up at IBM in Purchase, New York for this manager media planning and advertising. Bring us back, 24 years. I watched an old ad of Tim Clark holding out at 18 in Augusta. What was it like going from the agency to your in-house role?
As we reach 7 o'clock here in the East, we're in the closing stages of a marathon day at the Masters.
Got that out. It runs nicely.
Does it ever?
Does it ever? Could it be? Oh, my word!
That gives him second alone.
Well, thanks for acknowledging that ad. I love that ad. It's one of the greatest Masters ads I think we ever created. IBM's a great company. there's no doubt about it. We have a long history. If you look back at the companies that were on the stock exchange when we were founded in 1911,
right?
IBM's still here. And at that particular time, the company was challenged. So I thought it was a great opportunity. I knew we had a great heritage. I knew about IBM research. I knew what we had been doing in the Olympics for many years. And I just looked at it as an amazing opportunity to join the reinvention of IBM. And we continue to reinvent, IBM. That's, I think, one of the special parts of our company is that, eras may come and go and leaders may come and go, but there's kind of an enduring ethos to IBM, and we keep reinventing ourselves. So it's great to be here today.
I mean, skip ahead 12 years, and you're now manager for IBM's Smarter Analytics Leadership Marketing Program, which was really the company's #1 growth initiative at the time. What was that program, and how did marketing help actually grow the business?
Yeah, so at the time, analytics is all around us today, but we were trying to help people understand, getting their hands around their data and how it can help drive their business forward. So, just like today, we were trying to spark people's imagination around analytics. We had some great products and services at the time, and it was foundational to everything that we stood for at the company at the time. But we continue to grow and move on to new things like AI.
Then, starting in 2014, you began your current role, and one of those was the partnership with ESPN, helping them build out their fantasy platforms. And I was talking to Norb and Mark before you came in, and they were going back on their fantasy drafts. And full confession, the fantasy sports phenomenon has completely passed me by. But help unpack what the hold it has for so many millions of fans.
Yeah, so I have a 21-year-old, and I'm pretty sure that he loves his fantasy football team more than he loves the Jets and the Giants. We live here in New York.
That's amazing.
I actually think the ESPN program is one of the things I'm most proud of because it's really easy to recognize, there's a great tennis event, there's a great, football game, there's a great golf course, but fantasy football doesn't take place in a location. It takes place in a purely digital landscape. And we were talking earlier about people's consumption habits and how it's changed. And fantasy football is a perfect encapsulation of how people are engaging in sports in entirely new ways. They have their own team. They pay, amazing attention to everything about that team. And we get to engage, over 15 million people every single week for 4 months straight. So these are things some people just don't get fantasy football, but for the people that do, it's a lifestyle.
In one of the videos promoting the ESPN partnership, you said that unstructured data from Watson brings, I'm going to quote you here, the power of enterprise-grade AI to millions of people.
Every Sunday, the biggest game in the country doesn't take place on the gridiron. It happens in the ESPN Fantasy app.
Over 10 million people use the ESPN Fantasy app during football season, and that means billions of minutes in time spent playing our games.
But fantasy sports is more than just a game. For many football fans, it keeps them connected to friends and family, and is the primary way they enjoy the football season.
And Noah, that was 4 years ago, really 4 years before ChatGPT became a household word. It really is part of IBM's DNA, isn't it?
Yeah, well, look, along the line of my career here, I did have the opportunity to work on the Watson Jeopardy project, right? And so we've been on this, journey a very long time.
And so, Noah, for most Americans, the name Watson is really synonymous with the evolution of your technology since Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov in a game of chess in 1997. But it's the really namesake of IBM's founder, Thomas J. Watson, back in 1914 when he ran the company until his death in 1956. How much hold does the old man's legacy have on you and your colleagues?
Yeah, we often reflect on the Watson family, and again, the heritage. We talked about, why I joined IBM. The guiding principles of, client centricity are always not far from the surface when it comes to, our work around IBM. And naming Watson was absolutely part of that. I had the opportunity to work on the project. I got a call one day in 2008 from IBM Research, and they said, "We think we have a computer that can play Jeopardy. Can you help us?" And from that point on, it was really all about, bringing the legacy of Watson to life and bringing it forward to today.
As the Watson legend goes, IBM's Charles Lickel was in a restaurant one night when everything went quiet. Ken Jennings was in the middle of his 74-game run on Jeopardy, and everyone wanted to stop eating their steak and just watch.
And here it is. One day. This is the culmination of all this work. To be honest with you, I was emotional. I just thought about all the genius and all the talent of these researchers. I mean, they changed their lives. They changed the way they work, which is not always easy. They made this thing happen.
You know, when you look at that stage, you see Ken and Brad and Watson, and there's 30 people standing behind Watson. And that's just the core team. There's a whole army of people that have helped make this happen.
How was Watson eventually able to beat Jeopardy contestants on a regular basis? And how did the Jeopardy IBM challenge turn out and evolve into what Watson would be going forward?
Back to why I'm at IBM, I get to work with brilliant people. And how did Watson win? A lot of tireless dedication from IBM Research and the entire team that worked on it, and great collaboration with the producers of Jeopardy. You know, we played, I forget the number, but over 100 practice matches with Jeopardy champions over time. You know, and we just refined the system, and flash forward today, the DNA of that is still with us. I laugh at all the focus on AI today. I kind of say, where were you guys? Where was everybody 12 years ago? And, obviously the AI journey's been decades in the making, but this is just, another stop on the journey of our AI innovations.
One part of your job includes IBM's sponsor partnership with Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. On Friday, my colleagues and I are going down to Atlanta for the Aflac College football kickoff. Tell us about how IBM's integrated stadium technology platforms really enhances a fan experience if you've got 80,000 people watching a game.
Yeah, so whether it's Mercedes-Benz Stadium or some of the work we do up in, in Canada, the stadiums themselves are kind of living, breathing cities. They have all the kinds of dynamics around that. They have people need to get in and out. They need food and beverage. So these are great kind of showcases for us. We get to work on the stadium, but we also get to work with the teams to develop their digital platforms for how they engage in stadiums. One of the use cases around generative AI today is chatbots, and bringing chatbots for live use cases. Where's that bathroom? How far, how long is the line? These are the kinds of things that we see businesses are going to need, whether it's a stadium or a bank who needs to service their customers.
Going really deeper into what you're just talking about now, that same video that I saw from your earlier career, you talked about Watson helping customers with, I'm going to quote you, thousands of business scenarios where you're assessing value and making trade-offs. This is what the future of decision-making is going to look like, man and machine working together. For IBM, where does sports end and business begin?
Well, I don't know if it does. Again, these are businesses. They call their customers fans instead of customers or clients. And so does a sporting event or a bank need to engage their customers, grow their customer base, generate more revenue, have a solid digital platform, embrace AI in new ways, have an amazing cybersecurity platform that protects these platforms from the bad guys? These are all the same needs that companies around the world have. So I really don't draw a distinction between sports and business at all. I think sports is probably one of the fastest growing businesses in the world, as a matter of fact.
I mean, things have progressed for Watson since its use in lung cancer treatment at Memorial Sloan Kettering. There's now IBM Watson Group. It works as a teaching assistant in schools. It's become a staple of weather forecasting, tax preparation. There's even Chef Watson. Where do you think the future is heading?
I think businesses are going to make much more substantial use to it. I think the cat's out of the bag. I think everybody's now had an opportunity to touch it with their hands. And I think huge productivity is going to be gained in businesses. And that's not by replacing people. It's by making people better at what they do and supplementing them, with new skills and new capabilities. So I'm really not a great forecaster of the future, but I think productivity is where we see the future of AI.
We began our conversation talking a little bit about the power index. As we wrap up, I've been spending some time this morning on where IBM's power index is for both the men and the women's singles. As of today, or when I left the office anyway, Novak had moved up to number 1, Carlos dipped to number 2. On the women's side, Coco and Iga are stable at 1 and 2 respectively. What goes into the power index? What accounts for maybe the world's number 15, Russia's Lyudmila Samsonova, jumping 9 spots from the 17th most favorable spot on the draw now to 12 in the span of just one day?
Yeah, it's recency. Recent data. Again, how they played yesterday is probably pretty indicative of how they're going to play tomorrow. We coming into a tournament, we read millions of articles and words to actually hear what people are saying or what pundits and experts are saying. Is that player injured? How did they perform in Cincinnati or in DC? And then how they played yesterday is probably pretty important. So all that comes together on a daily basis to update those power rankings.
Does it dip into sort of the odd social media post where someone tweets and say, I think I just saw them turn their ankle?
We do have some protections. We use trusted sources of information. We work with the USTA. We work with our partners to make sure that data going into the model is appropriate to be used.
Where's this all heading? I mean, how do you think advances in AI technology are going to change the sports industry in the near term, from growing global audience engagement to media coverage to really aiding more players and coaches as they evaluate their work?
Yeah, look, I think across the board, whether it's the stadium, the coaches, the broadcasters, the media companies, they're all going to find ways to create new experiences, to evaluate their players better if you're an owner of a team, to evaluate yourself better if you're a player of the team, to provide a better experience to folks who come on site to get what they need. So I think we're really just at the starting point of the journey.
So as we probe on what's next, I did read that IBM is running a proof of concept trial for a new application that uses computer vision technology powered by AI to analyze streaming video footage in near real time. How does the real time video analysis work?
Yeah, so today we're using the data feeds coming off of the courts. We're not using vision yet. We're doing proof of concepts. But if you think about it, there's only so much information you can get from some of those structured data feeds. It's a passing shot, it's a winner, et cetera. The subtleties that we can catch from the video analysis is something that we think is going to enrich that content even more. Are there particular, we talked about patterns, are there particular positions that the players take? We think that vision actually provides, a richer set of data that will supplement the structured data coming off of the court. So that's part of how we think about it.
Well, Noah Syken, I look forward to looking at my US Open app from IBM and going out on the court and watching some tennis and learning a little bit more and getting a little deeper into the power.
Yeah, well, thanks. Download the app for sure. And thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us inside the Ice House.
Absolutely.
And that's our conversation for this week. Our guest was Noah Syken, Vice President for Sports and Entertainment Partnerships at IBM. That's NYSE ticker symbol IBM. If you like what you heard, please rate us on iTunes so other folks know where to find us. And if you've got a comment or a question you'd like one of our experts to tackle on a future show, email us at icehouse@ice.com or tweet at us at IceHousePodcast. Our show is produced by Lauren Sullivan and Pete Ash, with production assistance and editing from Ian Wolfe. I'm Josh King, your host, signing off from the library of the New York Stock Exchange. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Information contained in this podcast was obtained in part from publicly available sources and not independently verified. Neither ICE nor its affiliates make any representations or warranties, express or implied, as to the accuracy or completeness of the information, and do not sponsor, approve, or endorse any of the content herein, all of which is presented solely for informational and educational purposes. Nothing herein constitutes an offer to sell, a solicitation of an offer to buy any security, or a recommendation of any security or trading practice. Some portions of the preceding conversation may have been edited for the purpose of length or clarity.